Our objective in this tutorial is to show you how you can use events in Model View Controller pattern. Model storage of our data like health or damage value, view for example health slider, controller or maybe controllers of our game logic. After you download and import custom asset package, we have a download link below, we have a folder in assets named 05 Events Tutorial. Open it and double-click the scene. Now we can see our wooden floor, player and zombie teddy bear, staying there doing nothing. But it will be changed after we add some logic magic to them. First, we have to make one empty object and rename it to Events Holder. Make its prefab and select it. Then, in the Inspector panel, add component Events Holder. This component is part of Logic Forge and its function is to hold declarations for the events that we will use. Depending on the complexity of things that we need to do, we can declare different events which will by itself carry a different value or values. For example, we can declare an event that carries a value for the direction, speed and weight of a vehicle in a game that we want to create. For our tutorial, we will need two simpler events. The first one will be Health event, which will carry the health float value of our player. And the second one will be Damage, which will carry the damage float value that Zombear will do to our player. After declaring our two events, they become available to the Unity world. Each of the objects can use them when assigned. Let's first create the Zombear logic. Create logic asset, rename it to logic_Zombear, and assign it to Zombear, right wrist end bone prefab, by selecting it in Hierarchy panel and then select its prefab. We use this bone because the trigger collider is added there. Add component Model component. Add output Damage float 10. This value will be the damage that Zombear will be doing when it scratches the player. Now in Logic Editor, add component Listen event. This component listens to Unity events, but also listens to our custom events if we want to. In this case, we need to listen to Unity trigger event, so right-click on its title and choose 3D, then Trigger Enter. In Logic Editor, add component Invoke event. This component is used to invoke events of our choice. Here we need to invoke the damage event. to inform of damage inflicted upon player. Add a reference of Events Holder component on Events Holder prefab. From Events Holder node output point, drag a connection line to invoke Event node. Event to invoke input point. Select Damage from the list of events. Param 0 input point appears. This tells us that our damage event is declared to carry one value, a value of damage. Drag a modal component from Inspector panel to Logic Editor to make a reference of it. Connect bSuccess from Listen event to bEnable of Invoke event. This will enable Invoke event only when trigger enter happens. And at last assign Damage from Model Component node to Param 0 input point of Invoke event. This asset is set and ready for action. Notice, Invoke on Enable checker is set. Zombier logic asset action will be: if the trigger is invoked, invoke damage event which will carry a damage value of 10. Create a new logic asset and rename it to logic_player. Assign it to Player prefab. Add model component as for the Zombier prefab. Add parameter health. And add 100 for its value. Let's listen to the damage event. Add Listen event component. Then drag reference of Event Holder component. Drag a logic connection line from Event Holder output point over Listen event component title and choose Events. Select Connection line and in the menu choose Damage. Now the Listen event is set to listen for a damage event. The damage event will bring us a damage amount. We need to decrease the health for that amount. Now add Formula component. In Formula component, add Formula Health minus Damage. Choose float for both variables. Drag a reference of player model component. Assign health from player.model component to health formula component. Also assign out0 of listen event node damage amount received to damage input point of formula component node. Assign bSuccess of listen event to bEnable a formula component, because it should calculate only if damage event is happening. We need to store a new value health back to our data holder, our model component. So drag a connection line from the calculated output point of formula component over player.model component title and choose health. To inform our game world of health change, we will invoke a health event. Add invoke event component. From events holder, assign health event to event to invoke of invoke event node. Also assign health from player.model component to param0 of invoke event. This means that the health event will carry current health value. Create one more logic asset and rename it to logic slider. Assign it to health slider prefab. In Logic Editor, add Listen Event component and enable it. Make a reference of event holder component from events holder prefab. Assign events holder health event to listen event because we need to listen for the player's health change. Drag the slider component from Inspector to the Logic Editor to make a reference of it. Drag a connection line from out0 from Listen Event node over health slider.slider component and choose value. We have assigned current value to slider value. Assign bSuccess of Listen Event to health slider.slider component bEnable, so we do write down only when health event happens. This asset is set and ready for action. Now we need to check all instances for errors. As we have done in Hello World references, we need to swap prefab references for instance references. We have done it manually, but in case of having only one instance, you can use Auto option by clicking on red exclamation icon. Let's do it. After we have checked everything, it is time to test our logics. Press pause, then press play. Choose right wrist end bone in Zombear instance. After several clicks on Next Frame button, trigger event is invoked. This is the Zombear logic. As we can see, there are icons on the Listen and Invoke event components. These icons indicate that Listen event has heard the trigger event and that the damage event is invoked, carrying damage value of 10. If we select Player Instance, we will see the player logic. Also, we can see the Listen and Invoke icons, which means that we have heard the damage event with its value of 10. Formula component substructured damage from health and calculated is 19 now. It is stored in model component as a new health value. Health event is invoked and it carries the value of 90 with it. If we select Health Slider instance, we will see slider logic. We can see that the health event was heard and health value is displayed in slider. If we see Game View, we will see that the slider has changed its value to 90 also. That's it. We have used Events and Logic Forge to create this little game of ours. May the Logic Forge be with you.